My name is Mattie Gladstone. I was born here back in 84 years ago, and I thank the Lord for it. It was the home, the mainland style of a home for the man that had Sapelo. His son owned it. His son, it was his mainland home for it. And he, I'm sure, had probably built these for the servants' quarters here. And then over behind it, at one time, there was an outhouse. It had two sections to it, very nice outhouse. And there, when I was a girl, there was a barn there. My father had cattle, and he had a horse and a mule, mules for plowing the gardens. And they used the horse and buggies for traveling when they came to the mainland from Sapelo. They would have a wagon and a horses, mules for that.
And where is Sapelo in relation
Sapelo is about 3 miles off the, if you went down to Blue and Hall and looked, you could see it. Mike could see it. I don't think you can see it from here. It was bought by R.J. Reynolds in the early 1900s. It had been owned by the early settlers, and they would have to travel back and forth. Of course, they had slaves at that time. There's descendants of some of those slaves still living on Sapelo. But this property was owned by different people. One, as I said, the first one I think was the one who used it for mainland home for his, when he would come to the mainland from Sapelo. And then Dr. Clark married a lady whose family owned it in the early 1900s. No, in the late 1800s. And he married one of their daughters. He was a medical doctor. He used a horse and buggy, I'm sure, but people would have to come here to him as a doctor too. And I remember they told me one time someone had gotten killed on the highway out here, whether it was early days, you know, still had cars in those early 1900s. And someone had gotten killed, and they brought him, put him in the swing on the front porch, and Dr. Clark had pronounced him dead. My father came from South Carolina with the timber industry, and he operated a sawmill at Hinesville, but he bought this property, and he married my mother as a second wife. She was a descendant of one of the early McIntoshes, not the famous ones, but his name was, my great-great-grandfather was William, his son was Duke. His son was William Alexander, and his son was Duke, and that was my grandfather, Duke Merritt McIntosh. But he had a first wife, and that ended in divorce, and then he married my mother, and he bought this property. He worked with the sawmills in the area, and also anything that used steam, because he was very proficient at that. He built a store out here by the highway, and we had a post office. They were the postmasters from the 1930s on it to when my mother retired. He had a grocery store there. He would deliver, he would take orders from people on the weekend, or like on Friday and Saturday, and we used a horse, mule, and a wagon to deliver the groceries to them. When it goes around to the back, black people on the back road. We call it the back road. I think it's still called that. It's was a dirt road between here and the US 17. But this was just behind the ridge here. some of the black people still live there. There were people that I knew when I was growing up, and we didn't go to school with them, but we were friends with them because they would come to the post office and to the store, and we got to know them. And then when I did the cemetery book for the county, I got to know them even better because I used some of those that I knew now, that are in existence now, to help me with the black cemeteries, because we did all the cemeteries in the county.
And what year did your dad buy this property?
He bought it, I think, in the 20s, 30, we'll say the early 30s. These were servants' quarters, we called them slave cabins, but it was after the slave time, really. They were the servants' quarters. They may have been used as slave cabins at one time, but my daughter and children have cleaned them out. She took all the tools that she found that my father had owned and put them on the walls in here. And these are the saws he used to cut timber, cut lumber. This was the hand saw for cutting logs.
So people lived in here at one time?
Yes, when they had servants, they lived in here. You had a fireplace here, and they would have, I think, a stove on the other side. It just had a flue for the other side. But that's a beautiful old fireplace, probably built by some of the early slaves.
When do you think this building was built?
Probably in the 1800s. I don't see, I had one the other day, a square nail.
And when do you think people last lived in here?
What?
When do you think the last people lived in here? How long ago was that, you think?
Well, we had a colored woman who used it for a while when I was a girl, but the last ones would probably be the late 1800s, early 1900s, late 1800s.
Mattie, here's some square nails here, it looks like, on the door here.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I had a loose one, though, and I don't know what I did. I thought I'd put it right here by the door, but I don't see it. But they were here. The house had the square nails, too. This building here was the old kitchen for the house. Where are you? It was the old kitchen for the house. There was you had to go around the other side. It had a porch here and a walkway that came to this door. These are recent steps. But we used an artesian well up until almost World War II times. Then, no, before that, my mother had to put a pump, an electric pump on the well. We didn't get enough. It used to, the artesian well used to put water out behind the old store building. We had a fish pond out there, and my father had water faucets back here in the back to feed, and also over by where they had the barn. You want to come through here or not? Or just want to walk around? Let's walk around the house a little bit more. Let me get this. I had a different one, but let me get this. I don't feel too steady sometimes. On this side of the house, this was a conservatory. Dr. Clark was quite a botanist. He grafted some of the pecan trees. I'll show you one on the side of the house. But I don't know whether he planted all of these pecan trees or not, but he was quite a botanist. But this was a conservatory. And over here, there used to be a tall, big wooden reservoir, I'd call it, tank. And we had a hand pump on a well. We'd have to pump the water up into the reservoir, the big tank up there, to get water in the bathroom upstairs. But then my father put electric pumps on it, on the well, so we don't have to use that now. Well, I came back down here to take care of my mother, and then we lived in Savannah for a while. Then there was no one to look after the property after she had died. So we had a family, so the children and I moved back down here. My husband he was what you'd call a circuit riding preacher. He would go to different churches to speak on Sundays and especially work with children and in Bible camps. That's where we met, was in a Bible camp in Wisconsin. After I finished high school, I went to North Georgia College when it was still a junior college for 2 years. I finished there. I went to, I think we'll have to get away from them. They have been noisy all morning, excuse me. I went to Barrett School of Nursing at the University of Hospital in Augusta. And then I went to Bible school in Chicago, did camp nursing, and that's where I met my husband. And then my mother became ill, and we lived in Charleston for a while. We helped with a church there. And then she became ill and was by herself, so I came back down here to take care of her, and I've just stayed here ever since. We lived in Savannah for about a year, and there was no one to look after the property, so I came back down here. Then my neighbors were getting elderly, so I helped them until as long as they lived. As a child, I'd have to, when the pecans would fall, I'd always have to pick up nuts. Sometimes we would go back in the marsh a little bit. It's hard for me to tell you exactly where it is, where the grass is a little bit darker out there. There's a small creek, but the tidal marsh the salt marsh comes up to the back of the property there. Where those bushes stop, then the marsh begins. And it comes up there twice a day. You get the tidal marsh twice a day. In WPA days, to give men work and also to drain the marsh better, to cut down on the malaria and the mosquitoes, they had them dig ditches that parallel the land here and then go into bigger ditches that drain into the rivers. But that's Heard's Island out there. The people live on it now.
Do you have a lot of memories of playing out here as a kid?
Oh yes. Yes, we would walk from here we used to go swimming at Miss Garnett's. That's a little bit farther north of the village out here. And because there were shallower creeks and we could swim in them. But when I became in high school, my mother would let me go to Blue and Hall, but see, it's very deep water there. And then when I was growing in my high school days, some of the other children on the ridge, their parents would let them go if I'd go swimming with them. We'd go to Blue and Hall in the afternoon to swim after school. Go crabbing there, fishing. Not very good fishing off the dock. I used to laugh at the people from up in Georgia would come down and fish, and they'd catch these little tiny fish, you know. And here I'm forgetting everything. And we would laugh because we wouldn't keep anything like that. We'd only keep the larger fish. But back here you couldn't do much fishing because a lot of the septic tanks were still draining into the marsh. Not anymore, but they were. My father had come down from South Carolina in the late 1800s, the early 1900s with the sawmill, because he knew steam how to operate steam things. He had come down with the railroad, actually. We had a railroad that came here from Hinesville area. And then after they closed the railroad, he would work in, they had oyster factories where they would use steam for canning the oysters. And he knew how, if they had problems with that, he knew how to work on that. So he worked on that. And he had a field, had cows. Our cows all ran loose at that time. I can never laugh about the Greyhound bus would sometimes have to stop and chase the cow off the road. At night. They would sleep on the road because it was warmer.
Absolutely.
And so it, but my mother had grown up here. I said her father and grandfather and great-grandfather had property up the northern part of the county.
Could you talk a little bit about the social relationships between blacks and whites here in McIntosh County?
Well, they had their place, but my parents had a store and a post office, so we would have them come there, and sometimes we would play with the children when they'd come up there. We had a black lady who did our laundry. We had black people who worked for us in the house. And I remember one, as I started talking about Millie, she used to talk about balling the jack on the railroad track. She had a way she would dance, you know, not very a nice way, but I mean but her mother was a perfect lady, but Millie was a little bit on the wild side. But she would help clean the house, but her mother Hester had a husband who was blind. She cared for, so she did our laundry. We'd take the laundry to her and then go pick it up. We'd have a mule and wagon we could use to do that. We had horses later with my children, but we just had mules because my father used them to plow the fields.
So when you say he plowed the fields at that time, did you have more acreage on the land?
We had a place called the Thicket, which is north of here, and a friend of his owned the property. He worked on the waterfront in one of those business offices in Savannah. He was kind of a wealthy man, but my father would take care of the property, and he would plant the field out there. There's still tabby ruins from the plantation days there on that property. And he would plow this field. This was a field over here. He would plow it and plant corn and peas. But a lot of it was for the cattle, food for the cattle. He'd have some vegetable gardens, but sometimes he'd just buy the vegetables from other people, you know, maybe the black people or things like that.
What did your father do with the cattle? What did he have cattle for?
Well, we would milk the cows. He would sell them, I think, for meat when they got to a certain stage. But we'd use them to keep the grass and all down. This before we had electric lawnmowers, you know. We had an old push lawnmower. So he would use them, he'd put them out on the property to let them eat the grass and the bushes. But we would use them for, and he would, when he would butcher one of them, it would be kind of like a community. He would hang it up in a tree and, you know, butcher it, and then he'd start, what do you call it, cutting it apart, and he would share with people in the village. Not everybody, but we had some relatives and some people, and he would sell some of it in the store. He would make sausage or have sausage made, and he would sell that in the store. He had a big refrigerator. It had a lot of doors in it. He used ice after it quit working electrically, he'd had to buy ice to put in it. And he would go to Savannah and he would buy things like bacon and cooked meat, cured meat to sell in the store. Because a lot of people had their own chickens.
Now, when you say the village, you mean just downtown Darien?
No, the Ridge.
Oh, okay.
Ridgeville.
And could you talk a little bit about Ridgeville, how that relates to Darien?
Ridgeville. Oh boy, now I gotta get my mind together again. Well, it goes back to the early 1800s. There's a house as you're coming into the ridge from Darien, an old house on the left-hand side as you're going back that way. It's very old. This house, of course, is old. And there's one next door that's kind of old too, but there's one, used to be one down by Blue and Hall, but I think it's gone now. But the ridge has been here for a long time. It, as I say, it goes back to the early 1800s.
And how did it relate to Darien? What was the relationship between the two
Well,
towns?
Darien had been there from 1736 when the Scottish Highlanders came and settled. And some of the people that moved into this area and the other parts of the county were sometimes descendants of those early people, those early Scottish Highlanders. In 1936, they had a bicentennial here, and it had some of the family from Scotland who came. They had bagpipers and a big festival time at the fort, in connection with the fort. But there used to be in Darien, I appreciate this, I don't know where there used to be a hotel, you know where the stoplight is in Darien? On the right-hand side, I don't know what's there now, I can't remember what's there now. Used to be a hotel there. It went back to the early 1900s anyway. And sometimes people would come down in the wintertime and they would stay there. Or they would stay at the Teacup Inn until they got older and were not able to do it. There were people that used to come to Sea Island and St. Simon's. And when they had the Teacup Inn, some of the people this family had known when they were wealthy and were going up to Massachusetts in the summer, they would come over and have tea. They had a black lady, Mary, Aunt Mary. She was an excellent cook. And she was their cook all those years. A wonderful person.
Have you ever heard any stories about when they burned Darien during the war?
Well, because the Yankees came and they burned it. The people had more or less left. Some of them were fighting, but the other people, sometimes they would have homes at other places in the county, and they had to leave. When the Yankees came, I guess they left, and they would go back to other places. Some of them were already fighting for the South. Darien wasn't as large then as it is now. It was much smaller. The Yankees came in by boat from St. Simon's, and I guess some of the people left. They had already, when they saw them coming, they left and they went out into other parts of the county. But it seems like a vague recollection, of course that was before my mother's time, that even up in the other parts of the county that the Yankees would come, wherever there were rivers, come up and Most of the men were fighting. It was just the women and the children and the slaves that were left. Some of them went with the Yankees. Some of them left and went with them. We have a bedroom upstairs that is a large room with a fireplace that comes on this side of the house. And we had a double bed in it, feather bed. You ever have seen a feather bed? We have feathers in the mattress, and when you lay down in it, you sink down in it. It was nice in the winter time. And we had what we called a youth bed. It was small, about twice the size of a crib, but still was only about that wide. And in the winter time, when it was cold, my father would make a fire in the fireplace, and my brother would sleep in the youth bed, and my sister and I would sleep in the other bed. We had another, they had their bedroom, you have to step down into it where the windows are on this side. That was their bedroom. And they had curtains across the open area. But that's until we got older, that's where the way we slept. Then we had another bedroom up there that we would use for company. And I remember a lady who used to come down from North Carolina. Her father had bought property here, just between here and Darien on the river, and had an old house on it that went back to the 1800s, I'm sure. And she would come, I remember she would come down and stay there, but she didn't like to sleep there at night, so she would come and sleep, and she would sleep in that extra bedroom upstairs because we just used it for company. There were 3 bedrooms upstairs and a bathroom and the porch back that faces the marsh. The downstairs bedroom we only used, we had company. It was a man by the name of J.D. Ibbotson, who was a preacher, came from Chicago down to Charleston area, to Savannah first, I think, and then he went to Charleston. But we had a little community church here on the ridge that my father had helped build after the old Methodist church had to be torn down. And he would preach in there. He would preach in a church that wasn't used regularly except on Sunday at Crescent. And that's when we became real believers in Christ. We had been going to the Presbyterian church as a child. My father would go there. My mother had been a Methodist, and she didn't go with us very often. She worked all week in the post office and the store, and she was tired on Sunday. I remember the sago palms when I was a girl. My mother had a picture of me as a baby on a blanket in front of them. They were about half the size they are now. They need to be trimmed, but I was having to wait till my granddaughter came back from the Bahamas. She's been staying with her mother over there, and so they had to be trimmed. These are the newer growth, but those old brown ones need to be cut out. But they're so big now, I don't know how she'll ever get up to those others. I remember them up in the Charleston area and those old plantations up there. They were big. These tall palm trees, this will become a palm tree like that one over there and the other one over there. They're native of this area. We had the narcissus and snowdrops would go like in a pattern here, and then all the way down to the front gate. You hear that mockingbird? He sings all the time. I was sitting on the porch listening to him. My husband had to rebuild this front porch, The other one had gotten in such bad shape. And my daughter came down. She took a jigsaw and she took one of the old broken gingerbread off the railing there, and she cut all new ones and replaced every one of them. I didn't think I'd ever get them fixed, but she did it. These older pillows here, I feel like those may have been replaced, but these were some of the original pillars of the house. They put some cement over that to keep them from falling apart. But this is what some of the original bricks around this area look like. It's got moldy now, but they would have shell in it and white, kind of a white, creamy white. No, that doesn't.
And where did those bricks come from?
I think they were stacked under the house. And when Mary worked on those, she put them there. There used to be some in the fireplace here, but I don't think there are any now.
Is this the original fireplace here?
I think they planned to build another part to this house, but they never did. No closets in the house. That old, you'll have to excuse it, this is my bedroom and it's a mess. My husband and I put the paper, it was just wooden walls, but I wouldn't let him take down or do anything with those beautiful old boards. They would be the original boards. These are the original doors. Been here since I was a girl. What I love about these old doors, they have like a cross in the top part of it. This was the living room. We had I can't call it, it was a stove when I was a girl. And then Fred put this fireplace insert in it, and it gives good heat. But these original fireplace wood, the original boards upstairs. This was the living room. I hate for you to see this room, it's a mess. This was a dressing room. We had no closets for hanging clothes. All your clothes went in here. All your trunks with your winter clothes would go in here. And we were having a leak, so Mary put up that to get the water to go outside. This is a bedroom. My granddaughter will stay in this. Although she has a room down, that old kitchen out there. You want to see you know what this is? It's a sand dollar from the Bahamas.
Now, Mattie, the bugs that bad that you need to have a screen?
Huh?
Are the bugs that bad that you need to have?
Oh yes. I was thinking, I've seen them have two thing in the middle, and you really have to have it. The mosquitoes get terrible because, see, if the marsh isn't draining well, you get all the mosquitoes from that. But this was a porch. My husband loved to sit up here and look out at the marsh. It's a beautiful view. They have a lot of blossoms on them. Those long stringy things, I call them blossoms. That's what forms the nuts. This was where I slept as a child growing up. This was our bedroom when I was a girl. We had a double bed that sat over here, and then in this corner over here, a youth bed that my brother would, in the wintertime, he would sleep in the youth bed and we'd sleep in the other bed. This is my parents' room in here. We always had electricity here. There are places that did not have. A lot of the black people just had lamps, oil lamps, but we always had electricity.
How did you stay cool in the summertime here?
Had to stay cool. Get the wind. Go swimming. We had a fish pond beside the old store out there. The pond is still there, and we would sometimes get in that or get under the hose, but we'd go swimming. We weren't allowed to go to Blue and Hall. Those buzzards have been around, I've seen the last 2 or 3 days. There were 3 of them out there yesterday. We weren't allowed to go to Blue and Hall until I got into my teens.
What's Blue and Hall?
Oh, it's a river down here. You go down this way, you get towards the end, near the end of the ridge, there's a road that goes to the right.
And so you would just catch the breezes off here in the summertime. You'd open the windows and the breeze would come in?
Yes. We had some fans. They didn't always work too well, but you just depended on the cool weather, the wind. When the tide's coming in, it's usually when you get a stronger wind. These pecan trees, I don't know how old they are, because I was born in 1928, and they were big like this thin. So whether they must have, I don't know whether Dr. Clark, I know he did some of them, because there's one at the end of the house that he grafted onto a hickory nut tree. But whether he planted them all or not, that would have been in the early 1900s. Because the Lackesons owned it, and then he married a Lackeson daughter. Duke belonged to my grandfather, Duke Merritt McIntosh. It was a riding whip when you had a horse and wagon. It was made out of material, had wood in the center, and then it was covered with all this twine and material. It probably goes back to the 1800s. He died in 1930s.
Why do you think you all have kept it in your family for so long?
Beg your pardon?
Why have you kept it in your family for so long?
Well, my mother, I guess, when my grandfather died and my grandmother died, they all went out to the house and they divided up everything, and my mother got this. I think that's when. She may have had it before that, because we used to have a horse and wagon that we would deliver groceries with, a mule and wagon. But she kept it as part of her heritage.